The detractors cannot help themselves. Years ago, when Patrick Mahomes was a low-known college QB, they insisted that he was a gimmick QB whose style of play would not translate at the pro level. And in their defense, history was on their side, as before Mahomes, air raid QBs had little success, at least relative to their college career at the pro level. Mahomes began his pro career as a redshirt rookie, but in his first full season as a starter, he had one of the greatest QB seasons ever, joining the elusive 5,000-yard and 50 touchdown club in the same season, something only Peyton Manning was able to achieve in 2013. The detractors insist that Mahomes was simply playing in the best situation in the NFL, with the most dynamic receiver and tight end, and also the most creative offensive mind coach in the league, all of which are valid for sure, but ultimately meant to diminish Mahomes' unprecedented dominance so early into his career, but also ignoring how porous the defense that season was, which was a bottom-tier defense by any metric and film analysis out there. Fast forward to 2022. Mahomes looked as good as ever in the postseason after an up-and-down regular season before having probably the worst half of his career in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals. Shortly after, news was out that Tyreek Hill went out and he ended up joining the Dolphins. Kelce was still there, but at 33 years of age by the end of the 2022 season, there were concerns about whether he could maintain his level of play. The Chiefs revamped their receiving corps with the addition of Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a team that was full of solid or inconsistent receivers, but no true number one or game changer type like a Tyreek Hill, at least as far as receivers go. Kelce was still there. But for many, this season was supposed to give us a glimpse of who the real Patrick Mahomes was, that not having a cheat code like Hill would have a negative effect on his big playability and overall production. Instead, Mahomes ended up having his best season to date, and one of the best seasons we've ever seen. Hey guys, Cyber Sports here. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe to help grow my channel. For this video, I want to cover Mahomes' incredible season and why, despite most people believing him to be the best QB in the league and the MVP, it's still not enough praise for a guy that's well on pace to surpass any QB that's ever played the sport. Despite all that, it still feels like he's underrated in the grand scheme of things, and the more I look into Mahomes' season and first 5 years as a full-time starter, the more I'm realizing that we're all, as football fans, really taking him for granted. The numbers will tell you that he's as good as he's ever been, but looking at Mahomes' 2022 numbers at face value, many are overlooking why this is easily the best season of his young Hall of Fame career. Yes, at this point, he's definitely making the Hall of Fame if he retired now. In the Andy Reid era, the Chiefs have been an offensive juggernaut. A team that finished 32nd in points per game and 31st in points per drive back in 2012, finished 6th and 19th respectively in 2013 in Reid's first season coaching the team. The mid-2010 Chiefs had one of the most dynamic runs we've ever seen in Jamal Charles and the younger, more spry Kelce. By the time Hill joined the team in 2016, Jamal Charles was on his last legs. Both Hill and Kelce were producing at a high level and produced in spite of having the notoriously conservative Alex Smith at QB. And then Mahomes joined shortly after. Mahomes may have had some flaws entering the pro level, where a year on the sidelines definitely helped greatly, but once he was a full-time starter, he had at his disposal two of the most dynamic playmakers in the league. Mahomes took the NFL by surprise, and from a personal standpoint, he got me back into the sport with his dominant first full season campaign. Watching the highlights for those games, you saw a man that could and did throw the ball from anywhere, making throws we hadn't really seen since Sonny Jurgensen in the 60s. All of these factors contributed to Mahomes having what is still statistically his most productive campaign, leading a flawless Chiefs roster to a 12-4 record, historically dominant offense, and reaching the AFC Championship game where they lost to the Patriots. Thanks, D. Ford. The following season was a down year statistically for Mahomes, but it is worth noting that he was injured midway through the season and had a far better postseason in 2019 than 2018. Obviously not a better season, but as a pure QB, I do believe he improved. 2020 was, from a statistical standpoint, not too far off from 2018. His pocket presence and reads began to improve as opposing teams were better prepared for his offense, and before a late season slump, he was on pace to be as productive, if not more, than in his 2018 campaign. A fantastic season that merited MVP honors, but lost out to Rodgers having an arguably better season. Mahomes could have easily had a 5,000-yard, 40-touchdown season had he opted to play versus Chargers, but in leading the Chiefs to a 14-1 record despite the typical porous defense, he didn't play in the season finale. And then the year 2021 happened. First with a dominant postseason game against the Browns and Bills, despite an injury scare versus the Browns, but then the Super Bowl against the Bucks at their place, because of course it was at their place. It's Tom Brady they faced, the luckiest of all time. The combination of elite Bucks front seven, injured offensive line, and cover 2 high shell look had Mahomes produce statistically his first truly awful game. But a game that anyone that watched swears wasn't a bad game, as Mahomes did the absolute best anyone could have done in his situation. Unfortunately for Mahomes, it was a sign of things to come, as while he did start the 2021 season strong, he had a bizarre regression that hit rock bottom against the Titans. Mahomes and the Chiefs were struggling to adapt to how teams were now defending them, and Mahomes had changed the game from a dynamic, trigger-happy gunslinger to basically a dink and dunk merchant. It zapped a lot of the excitement watching Mahomes as he became more of an Alex Smith clone, but perhaps it was a necessary adjustment to make Mahomes an even more dynamic, well-rounded QB. Fast forward to the 2022 season. Coming off an embarrassing home playoff choke, the lost Tyreek Hill, the aging Travis Kelce, a regressing receiving core, and a revamped AFC West with the worst QB of the group heading into the season, Derek Carr, don't block me, was still an above average QB. We had the critics on full force declaring that the Chiefs were at risk of missing the playoffs, that their offense would regress, that Mahomes would regress. In case you forgot or don't believe, here's some clips.
Well, in the AFC West, it's got to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they have the best quarterback in the division, and I get it. I know there's going to be a lot of skepticism now that Tyreek Hill is in Miami. But Patrick Mahomes, I feel like for whatever reason this offseason, Molly and Stephen A., we have kind of forgotten a little bit about Patrick Mahomes. This seems to be the offseason of Brady coming back. You talking about Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Like, we're talking about everybody else except maybe the most talented quarterback the game has ever seen. And I just think that you're going to get a motivated Patrick Mahomes because everybody's going to say, well, how are they going to do it without Tyreek Hill? How are they going to be able to manufacture those big plays? And I think that this guy is going to come out and for the first time, maybe since the first time he stepped on the field, you're going to see a guy with something to prove, not only to himself, but to everybody else out there. So I think there is no question in my mind, Stephen A., that the team to beat in the West, it's got to be Patrick Mahomes.
I think a new team has arrived in the AFC West, and their name is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
It could be a reset year where you guys missed the playoffs.
Will KC's offense take a step back without Tyreek Hill?
Listen, I really believe that the answer to that, and it's hard for me to say this, being that I am a wide receiver and I always want to fight for my wide receivers, I really believe they will not take a step back. Now, let's break this down. Let's talk about what we are talking about here. I've seen Patrick Mahomes in preseason, and I know these have been preseason games, and that's what they are. But this dude has looked as good as you've ever seen a quarterback look in a preseason game. He is playing great football without even his top talent, without Juju Smith-Schuster and all those guys on the field. He's throwing to anybody they can find, anywhere they can find anybody, and he's spreading the football around.
I also let you talk because I was stunned by the blasphemy of your ignorance. I'm not saying the Kansas City Chiefs are going to fall up the map. I'm not saying the Kansas City Chiefs ain't going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes ain't that dude and he ain't as great. And Travis Kelce, my brother from another mother, ain't that dude either. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, let's not sit here and act like you could lose Tyreek Hill and it don't mean anything. What I'm saying to you is, as good as those brothers are, and they can play, they ain't scrubs. And as good as I believe Kansas City will be, let's not act like it ain't going to be a drop-off without Tyreek Hill.
Not going to be as explosive. I agree with you that the best single narrative for MVP would be Patrick Mahomes does not have Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. But because he doesn't have Tyreek Hill, he is not going to win the MVP. I think that Patrick Mahomes continues to get a little bit, and I hate to use this word, but exposed.
History has continued to not be on their side when it comes to Mahomes, who finished the season with his second 5,000-yard 40-touchdown season. His 5,614 combined passing rushing yards is now the most total yards in the season. And yes, it's worth noting that he played 17 games, which definitely cheapens the latter achievement, but he was over 5,000 passing yards and right at 40 touchdowns even after 16 games. Plus, it's worth noting that Breeze achieved the previous record of 5,562 yards in a season that saw prolific passing from several QBs, likely due to the NFL lockout that ended just barely before the season began. That's not to diminish Breeze's 2011 season, one of the best non-MVP QB seasons ever, but the context surrounding both years of QB play must be pointed out. Overall passing efficiency is roughly the same now as it was in 2011, a 5.9 adjusted net yards per pass attempt, or NER, my personal favorite QB stat, for both seasons. But the league in 2011 hadn't yet fully caught on to Mars spread offense, which I believe had the most to do with the noticeable increase of passing efficiency from 2015 up until recently. And let's ignore the drop on 2017 because QB play was just flat out not good that year. That's for video for another day. So that begs the question of why QB production started to regress in 2022. A lot of factors. It would honestly merit review of his own, so I won't go too in depth with any of them, but I believe the main factors are the increased utilization of cover 2 show, the decline in offensive line play and improvement in defensive line play, and a massive overhaul in team offenses, with roughly 75% of the entire league either having a new QB, wide receiver 1, or head coach. And this will put QBs who maintain the same team, wide receiver 1, and head coach at an advantage, which is not applicable to Mahomes, who lost his wide receiver 1 and had him replaced by the injury-riddled Juju Smith-Schuster. Of course, it's misleading to ignore that Kelce was still there, and throughout Mahomes' career, Kelce has been his actual favorite target. But the big play capabilities of Hill was expected to be sorely missed by Mahomes, as noted Mahomes fanboy Skip Bayless pointed out earlier. There's no doubt what Hill brings to the table has helped Tua tremendously this season, along with several other factors, but for a player as dynamic as Mahomes, I don't believe Hill is anything more than a luxury. The verdict's still out on what Mahomes would look like without Kelce or Reid, but after this season, we can forget about the talking point that he benefited tremendously from Hill. Mahomes finished the season as the most productive QB in the league, ranking by far the most prolific in passing yards, total yards, and finishing first in passing and total touchdowns. He did this while ranking third in total attempts, and also finished second behind Tua in passer rating and NER. ESPN's QBR had him at first, with only Allen's season being remotely close. Mahomes also only had one pass touchdown that would classify as being garbage time. This fourth quarter touchdown up 37-23 against a dominant 49ers team, and a few interceptions came when the game was largely over, like this interception against the Bucs up 41-24 with right under 5 minutes remaining. Advanced metrics paint a similar picture. Mahomes' grading is by far the most prolific in these categories, which if you guys don't know what they are and how they're calculated, just know that while no advanced metric is perfect, and this is especially the case in basketball, advanced metrics for QBs are very good from my experience and do paint a very accurate picture of how dominant a player was that season. One reason why expected points added, or EPA, loves Mahomes is because Mahomes is fantastic in third and fourth down scenarios. I mean, look how much better he is than the rest of the league, and third and fourth down dominance is a very important component to how EPA is calculated. And here's where the season stacks up since 1999 for EPA. It doesn't rank too highly. EPA per play has a tie with his 2019 season for 20th since 1999. But it must be stressed that Tua's 2022 season ranks 58th since 1999. And then in relative terms, Mahomes had one of the strongest seasons by QB in the EPA era. I mean, and by the way, this is a good time to point out that 2006 Manning ranked 13th EPA per play. And the next highs that season were Romo and Breeze in 9th, 3rd, 9th, 4th overall. I don't believe there was ever a more dominant season relative to peers than Manning's 2006. 2022 Mahomes isn't quite 2006 Manning, but I see a similar gap between him and the rest of his peers, and while the numbers generally do a very good job demonstrating that, the film does an even better job. So what changed about Mahomes? How was he able to still dominate and lead the best offense in the league? It begins with how he responded to the high show looks the 2020 Bucs and the entire league in 2021 threw at him. He's turned himself into a more patient QB that's taking what the defense is giving him. He's still capable of making the insane throws he made before 2021, but the looks defenses now give him and the loss of Tyreek's explosive playmaking has forced him to adapt, and he did a fantastic job of that this season. But even the more conservative approach to throwing football hasn't stopped him from utilizing some throws from time to time, like these back shoulder throws that he wasn't really utilizing before this season. And the last major adjustment I've seen that Brett Coleman pointed out in a recent video of Mahomes is that Mahomes is not going as far back as he used to. And while I don't have an issue trying to be as difficult a sack as possible, Mahomes did have a bad tendency of overdoing it when a guy with his mobility that I need to go so far back. Going about 8-10 yards back instead of 15-20 yards back has made a big difference for his O-line protection. These changes have allowed him to adjust and dominate the QB position at a historic level. It's given him a blueprint to how to extend his dominance when his physical tools begin to decline, and he's only getting started. In the meantime, he just had himself another clear MVP caliber campaign, leading a flawed Chiefs roster at all phases of the game to a 14-3 record. And while the unfortunate Bills-Bengals cancellation and easy schedule helped allow that to happen, given the cast around him and his overall brilliance, I see it as a testament to his own greatness that the Chiefs are in position to have a bye week. The discourse around Mahomes reminds me so much of the discourse around Peyton Manning, where his offensive brilliance was attributed to receivers or linemen by his detractors, even when he constantly proved over and over that he had far more to do with his production than his receivers and offensive line did. And I believe Mahomes will follow the trend of this brilliance critics like Manning before him did. I believe that as Kelce and Reid are eventually replaced, and as the offensive line continues to change, that Mahomes will continue to dominate and show that he is the catalyst for his team's offensive success. And what's crazy about Mahomes is that he's been playing at a historical level 5 years in as a starter, and yet historically most Hall of Fame QBs do not peak 5 years in. The two QBs that remind me the most of Mahomes up to this point are Marino and Favre, dynamic gunslingers that as starters took the league by storm, but were marred with inconsistencies the rest of the way. Worth pointing out that the quarterback coach for the Packers when Favre was there, for a few years at least, was none other than Andy Reid. Early in his career I had fears that he would end up in a similar path, but his improvement decision making leads him to believe that he'll end up more like Manning, where he started off great, arguably the best as soon as their second season in the league, had a bump along the way of 2001-2021 respectively, and then enter another gear 6 seasons in as a starter. Brady had arguably his best season about 6 full seasons in with that dominant 2007 campaign. His first 6 seasons as a starter have exceeded theirs, and no amount of error or contextual adjustments can dispute that. And I suspect his best year is still ahead, and will be on a different stratosphere from anything we've ever seen out of the QB position. Will that be enough for him to lead the flawed Chiefs to the promised land again? In the ultimate team game, I have a hard time betting on the Chiefs, but I won't bet against Mahomes with a competent scoring cast. Whether he'll get that in the postseason is to be determined, especially against the more complete teams like the Bills, Bengals, and Eagles. Thanks for watching this video. Leave a like and subscribe to help the algorithm, and regardless of how this postseason ends for Mahomes, hoping this video isn't a jinx by the way, I believe Mahomes is an incredible athlete and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of his career plays out. The sky's the limit for Mahomes.